Thank you for attending the July 6th Lakewood City Council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Anderson,
Present.
Bullock, Juris,
Here.
Madigan,
Here.
Marks, here, Nowlan,
Here.
O'Leary.
Here.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held June 15, 2015.
Move to adopt without the necessity of a reading.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded by Councilman Anderson. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? And any abstentions?
One.
That's it. Thank you, Councilman Anderson. Yes.
Item 1, Committee of the Whole Report of 7/6/15 meeting.
Thank you. We had a busy night at Committee of the Whole tonight. We began essentially by deferring one item, which will be deferred again on tonight's docket. We did not get to item number 2, which was the proposed third amended charter discussion. We went into item 3, which was a discussion about the Rockport Square development, and heard from a representative of a representative of Forest City Land Group, and Bill Sanderson, who's a consultant to Forest City Land Group. We got a full and thorough report on the proposal for Phase 3 and Phase 1B of Rockport Square, which some of you may know is on Lakewood's east end. It is on the north and south sides of Detroit, near the shore and near Fry. A full and an electronic version will be available, and maybe we can get that up on the website, but also available if you care to ask. There was a long, lengthy, vibrant discussion on the issue, and we look forward to some development on the east end soon. We also did a quick agenda review, and we apologize to those of you in here for being late, but the business presses on. Move to receive and file that oral report.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that motion and second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 2, Resolution 880515, a resolution to enter into an agreement.
Move to defer.
Second.
This is being deferred as the administration is getting more information from a vendor. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 3, Resolution 880915, a resolution to enter into an amended agreement with Rockport Square for the development of the remaining phases of the Rockport Square Development Project, referred to the Committee of the Whole 6/115, deferred 6/15/15.
Move to defer.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Item 4, Public Works Committee Report regarding Resolution 880615, 881315, and 881415.
Thank you. Councilman Juris, Chair of Public Works.
Thank you, Madam President. Tonight, Public Works Committee met to discuss 3 items, 3 resolutions that were before us. Present were all 3 members of the committee, including myself, Councilman Bullock, Councilman O'Leary. We were later joined by Council members Madigan and Marks, as well as Director Butler, Benno, and Pay. Again, we discussed 3 topics that were before us. The first that we discussed was 8813, which would be a design-build contract for our clean water pilot project. Okay, sure. Sorry about that. Again, that was the $800,000 project for the clean water pilot. After going through some of the details regarding cost controls and kind of trying to lay out the process of how that project would work, we eventually voted unanimously to adopt or recommend adoption tonight. The second item that we discussed was Resolution 8814, which would be the item that was discussed at the last council meeting regarding a fish shelf that would be down in the river in the valley there. Again, that would essentially be looking to accept Ohio EPA funds for $122,000 and change, as well as matching funds from the city of $81,894. After some discussion of the merits of the project, which were identified by Director Benno as a erosion rate of, I believe, somewhere in the area of 10 to 15 feet over the past 3 to 4 years, it certainly seems warranted to address the issue. We also heard from Director Fay, who identified the funds that the $81,000 would come from, which would be from the wastewater or the sewer fees, in regards to wastewater treatment. So again, identifying the need and the financial capacity, the committee voted unanimously again to recommend adoption before full council tonight. Final item that we discussed was Resolution 8806. This was the item that has been in Public Works before regarding the approval of submerged lands at 12550 Lake Avenue. This is again in regards to erosion protection. Had quite a bit of discussion on it, and eventually, after identifying some of the details, council, the committee did not have a motion to recommend adoption, so we had moved to defer. That item will be picked back up again. Being a resolution, there's not a number of readings required or anything to that regard. So once everyone is fully up to speed on the item, we'll bring it back into committee and see where it goes from there. Receive and file. Thank you.
I second your motion. Is there any discussion on the motion to receive and file the oral report of the Public Works Committee? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Item 5, Resolution 880615, a resolution approving the use of submerged lands for property located at and abutting 12550 Lake Avenue.
Move to defer.
Second.
The motion to defer by Councilman Juris, Chair of the committee, and the second by Councilman Bullock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 6, Resolution 881315, a resolution to enter into a design-build form of agreement for the design and construction of corrections to the sewer system under the Western Lakewood Clean Water Pilot Project with underground connections in an amount not to exceed $800,000. Refer to the Public Works Committee 6/15/15.
Move to adopt.
Second. Motion to adopt. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 7, Resolution 881415, a resolution to accept a grant from the Ohio EPA Clean Water Fund Grant for the Lakewood Stream Bank Restoration and Fish Shelf Project in the amount of $122,842 and requiring a match by the city in the amount of $81,894. Refer to the Public Works Committee 6/15/15.
Move to adopt.
Second, on the motion to adopt, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 8, Rules and Ordinances Committee Report regarding committee meeting held June 22nd, 2015.
Okay, may I, before we begin, before I call it Councilman O'Leary, for all of my colleagues tonight, can we make an effort to speak into the microphone and speak as clearly and loudly as we can? Because we have been having audio issues, and not just from those of us over the age of 50. There have been, I've heard a lot of it lately, so thank you.
All right.
I know you're,
I apologize, my mic was off. Sorry about that. That would be part of the problem.
thank you.
Dear
Councilman
colleagues,
O'Leary.
thank you. Dear colleagues, the Rules and Ordinances Committee met on Monday, June 22nd, 2015, to consider proposed ordinance 25-15, the quarterly codification ordinance. Notably, with thanks to Maureen Bach, the council staff, efforts are underway within City Hall to ensure that the city's zoning map, which is incorporated into the city's code, is actually updated and properly codified and published. The committee unanimously expressed its continued dissatisfaction with the lackluster services of the city's third-party codifier and publisher, Walter H. Drain Company, and Conway Green. The committee unanimously recommended adoption of the quarterly codification ordinance tonight upon its third reading. Thereafter, the committee undertook consideration of proposed ordinance 23-15, and extensive conversation was had amongst members of the committee, Law Director Butler, Human Resource Department of Human Resources Director Yusefi, members of the public, and our council colleagues. For a more detailed accounting of these discussions, the chair points to the minutes of the June 22nd, 2015 Rules and Ordinances Committee, which are incorporated herein by reference. In the course of these conversations, several points of concerns were noted and discussed, with the conclusion that additional meetings would be required to complete discussions and amendments. Accordingly, the committee will convene next on July 27th, 2015, to hear amendments and continue consideration of proposed ordinance 23-15. In the interim, I will schedule and publicly notice a meeting with Law Director Butler to discuss and draft those amendments. I also do have one correction to this report. I believe that I stated the committee unanimously recommended adoption of proposed ordinance 25-15 tonight upon its third reading. I'm informed that tonight is the second reading, so I would request accordingly that council consider adoption on its third reading. Respectfully submitted, yours truly.
Move to receive and file that written report.
Second.
On the motion and second, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 9, ordinance 2515, an ordinance to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances and resolutions as part of the various component codes of the codified ordinances and to provide for the publication of such new matters, placed on first reading and refer to the Rules and Ordinances Committee 615-15.
Move to place on third reading.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
On second reading?
Second.
Yes.
Sorry.
I withdraw my second.
Move to place on second reading.
Withdraws his motion, makes a new motion, and I second that motion. It is on second. All those in favor, is there any discussion on that? Everyone clear on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And that motion passes. Before we get to new business, if there's any more public comment sign-in, Mrs. Graham, just so you don't miss it this time, have you signed in if you choose to? And anyone else, please feel free to sign in.
Item 10, City Council appointments to the Clean Water Integrated Planning Task Force.
Thank you. Members of council, let this confirm Councilmember Marks' appointment of Colin Molino and Councilmember O'Leary's appointment of John Kilgore to the Lakewood Clean Water Integrated Planning Task Force. Sincerely, move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
On that motion and second, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 11, communication from Planning and Development Director Siley regarding modification to the Rockport Square plan development.
Director Siley.
Madam Chair, thank you. Members of council, I'll direct your attention to my correspondence. As you know, and as we discussed at committee of the whole this evening, as we have at previous meetings and will continue to do in future meetings, Forest City, in partnership with Ryan Homes, has proposed to build 51 townhomes on the undeveloped portions of the Rockport Square site, phases 3 and 1B, the north side and south side of Detroit. About a month ago, we requested that council refer to the Planning Commission and ADR review of this proposal for a recommendation. This communication is just to update council that both Planning Commission and ADR are recommending to council approval, adoption of the proposed development, and I ask that you just receive and file this communication. We will be bringing forward legislation related to these projects in the near future for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file the communication from Director Siley.
Second.
On the motion, is there any discussion? I will just add that these plans and attending correspondence or minutes from these plans and this presentation is available to any council member at any time to review and any member of the public, but it is there, and thank you for filing this way so that we are all very clear that this did go through two of our volunteer boards. Thank you, Director Siley. Is there any further conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion passes.
Item 12, liquor permit application for C1 and C2 transfers to 17796 Detroit Road from Web Food Mart, same address.
Mr. Anderson?
I'll defer to the chair of the committee before I get into the report.
Okay. Chair Bullock?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The most exciting part of the meeting receipt of a liquor permit report from Departments of Law and Police. Both say that they find no statutory reason to object or other reason to object, nor do I, but I would be happy to defer to the Ward 1 councilman in whose ward this business is located.
Thank you very much. In a couple of discussions with the investigating officers, find no reason to object to this legal transfer, so no objection.
So move to file with no objection.
Second, on the motion to file with no objection, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And the ayes have it.
Item 14 is an add-on communication from Mayor Summers regarding appointments to Lakewood Clean Water Integrated Planning Task Force.
Mayor Summers.
Thank you, Madam President, members of council. I'm very pleased to acknowledge that Babette Gowda, Jeannie Smith, Patrick Wadden, Glenn Coyne, and Jim Rambisek have expressed interest and each bring a particular talent that will benefit mightily to helping us with the integrated planning requirements by the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. I would also like to let council know that unless you have objection, we actually had an astounding response of folks who were interested in this particular assignment. And for the members of the audience, this is an advisory group. It's about a one-year assignment. The group's citizens will meet once a month, and the subject is our sewer system. So you can imagine our delight and surprise when we had citizens who had unique experience and abilities step forward and say, we'd love to talk about our sewer system. So I want to take advantage of this particular group, and since this advisory group will never cast a vote and will not spend any money, I would like to invite them all to the first meeting so that they might further acquaint themselves with the subject, and to the extent that these are public meetings anyway, they're interested in staying involved. I would love to encourage them to do so. Now, they will bring advice to us. They will help us understand the implications of impact on the community, and they will also help us communicate the complex world of complying with the Clean Water Act of 1972 as interpreted by the federal and state EPA. So if there's no objection, I'd like to make sure that's a robust invitation along with your appointments, and your appointments are among those 24.
Thank you. How many appointments do you have, Mayor? I can't.
Well, I think we targeted about 11 or so I have 5, and you have 6 or 7. So I have 4.
We have 7.
And we have, I guess you have the rest, but we want to get going. That's the other thing that's important. So we're going to have a meeting, I think, next week on Wednesday. So we'll invite these folks, all of them. And I think what I'd like to do is work with you and sort out who's technically on it, but more importantly, we need citizen involvement.
Terrific, thank you. And just for the record, how many names did you just read?
I read 5.
You read 5, you have 4 appointments, so
So I will do
definitely.
one to someone else.
And not everyone on council has made an appointment, so we can work out so that those who are interested, and indeed others suggested by this council, can attend. And for anyone in the audience, if you have the time and are interested in that, please let us know at the end of the meeting, because council still has some appointments. Thank you for that report. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on the mayor's communication? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion passes. That brings us to the conclusion of the business of council, but we have more business. We have public comment sign-in. Going to read through the list in the order in which people signed in. Joel Eggerston. And this might be a good time to remind people about addressing council. So I will read it again. The president may recognize any non-member for addressing council on any question then pending. In such case, that person shall address the chair, state his or her name and address, and the subject matter he or she desires to discuss. Speakers must be courteous in their language and avoid personalities. When addressed by the chair, the speaker must yield the floor and comply with all rulings of the chair, said rulings not being open to debate. Except with permission of council specifically given, speakers shall be limited to 5 minutes. No person who has had the floor again shall be recognized until all others desiring an opportunity to speak have been given an opportunity to do so. And Ms. Hagan, the clerk, keeps time. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eggs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Joel Egerton. I live at 12900 Lake Avenue, number 1923. My mother told me always to respect my elders and listen to them. Now I are one. My wife Bonnie and I moved to Ohio in retirement almost 10 years ago from Washington, D.C., where I last served as Senior Drug Policy Advisor to the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Bonnie as a librarian at the museum. We chose Lakewood because of its rich history and promising quality of life. Quality of life issues to us include housing, education, the arts, economic development, and health care. Since arriving in Lakewood, I have engaged in a number of activities supporting these core issues through volunteering at the city on housing issues, serving on the board of the directors at the Carlisle Condominium, and the board of directors at the Beck Center for the Arts. Bonnie serves as a library volunteer at the Lakewood Historical Society and on the Grounds Committee at the Carlisle. Together, we proudly worked for the election of quality candidates to the Lakewood School Board. For us, quality of life includes faith, and we are active members of Lakewood Presbyterian Church. Over the course of our years here, Bonnie and I have also developed an abiding appreciation for the rich history of Lakewood. Bonnie often regales me with fascinating historical factoids about Lakewood that she learned in her work at the Historical Society. That appreciation extends to the long-standing contribution of Lakewood Hospital to the well-being of this community. In fact, that appreciation is personal in that Bonnie experienced outstanding care when she underwent an emergency appendectomy at Lakewood Hospital some 7 years ago. Nevertheless, that appreciation and an emotional inclination to support the notion of saving a building is countered by the reality that any objective reading of the current situation reveals that such care cannot be sustained in the existing delivery form. Being retired, Bonnie and I have the luxury to walk parts of the city virtually every day. We marvel at the vibrant quality of life activity in commerce, education, the arts, and civic involvement. From the Blackbird Bakery on the far west edge of town to Angelo's Pizza on the east side, from Italian Creations to the south, and Pier W north on the lake, food services thrive. Businesses large, think Hinkley Lightning, and small, Cerny Shoe, provide goods and services to the people of Lakewood and well beyond. We have seen a complete transformation of our education physical structure with new construction, major reconstruction, and conversion. This physical transformation will serve the educational needs of our city well into the future. The Beck Center for the Arts has become one of the largest performing arts and arts education organizations in Northeast Ohio, offering acclaimed professional and youth theaters and over 200 weekly classes for people of all ages and abilities. Recent highly visible civic activities include the Lakewood Park Solstice Step Project and the resurfacing of Madison Avenue continue to validate Lakewood as one of the 5 best hometowns as voted by Ohio Magazine. Bonnie and I ask each other why the city would purposely allow the depletion of millions of dollars in Lakewood Hospital Association funds through the continued operation of an outdated healthcare model, reject the prospect of a significant new tax base associated with the development of city property, and deny our citizens access to a new $32 million family health care facility and a vibrant multi-purpose development in the middle of downtown. We respectively encourage this council to act favorably on the proposal currently before you. Thank you.
That was perfect timing. Thank you, Mr. Eggleston. I appreciate your participation. Jim Gagan.
Thank you. Jim Gagan, 1222 Chase Avenue, and I'm going to speak about the sewers. Imagine sitting in your living room or lying in bed at night and hearing a storm coming, and hearing the weather reports and hearing it's going to be a bad one. And you're sitting thinking to yourself, is my basement dry? Is my waterproofing system going to work this time? And then going down and checking, and seeing this. I'll pass this out after I'm done, if you're interested. 4 inches of water in the basement. That's been the lives of the people on Chase Avenue 3 times in the last few weeks. From June 15th through June 27th, 18 homes on Chase, plus Lincoln Elementary and St. Luke Church, had basements flooded 3 times for a total of 24 properties that took on water. We went around door to door, talked to people, and found out, and we put together a chart here that shows the amount of flooding we had in the last month on Chase. So again, we'll pass that out as well. In the school, we have Lincoln School there. There's children there, and now mold growing, possibly. The church had a funeral interrupted by water coming down the hallway, or funeral reception on June 27th. When we went around to a few of our neighbors, we asked them if they couldn't make the meeting, email me and tell your story. So I'm going to read a couple of emails here. Glad to hear someone is frustrated as I am over Lakewood's inadequate storm drains. The local plumbers have been talking about this one for some time now, and I can verify that's true. When I see tax money being spent on cosmetic things like new street signs, I think, how could the city think this is our biggest problem? I have definitely been affected by the rain getting into my basement the last few weeks. Another one, just moved into our house 6 months ago. We thought everything was all clear, but due to what the plumber says, who just snaked our drains, the combined pipe system, heavy rain will continue to back up in our basement. We bought the house 6 months ago. Our basement was partially finished. All carpeting, padding, baseboards, everything needs to be replaced. Another one did not have basement water problems, but did have a waterproofing company come in and said, new downspouts, new gutters, 2010. There were water marks in them. They believe that was from the storm drainage. They called the city the next day and said, we think there's a problem with the street drainage. And the person on the other end was quite rude and said the overflowing gutters were my problem, not theirs. Another person, I had 8 inches of rain on June 15th, 4 inches the other 2 times. The mission statement for the City of Lakewood Water Division says to maintain the free flow of storm and sanitary sewage through the city's wastewater collection system. I don't think free flow includes into our basements. Also, to minimize the risk of health and property by providing prompt maintenance and repair service, that's great, but that's a reactive measurement instead of proactive. To respond to all customers' inquiries concerned promptly, courteously, and professionally. I think one of the emails suggested it wasn't very courteous. Our house at 1222 Chase has flooded many times in the 11 years we've been on the street. 5 years ago, we invested in a full waterproofing system. In talking the last few weeks with a lot of the neighbors on the street, others have done similar type waterproofing systems. I estimate anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 has been spent by the homeowners on that street to waterproof their basement, and it's not preventing anything. Comments I've heard over the 11 years from the city was, it was an historic storm. Well, we just had 3 historic storms in a month. We've had a dozen historic storms in 11 years. One of the sayings, it is what it is. It's not a historic storm anymore, it's a storm. Or the sewers are old, they just can't take the volume anymore. Those are statements that say, it is what it is, let's just accept it and move on. It's not acceptable anymore. I'm one of the most frugal people you'd ever want to meet. We still have a VCR in our house, but it works. But we have other old stuff that doesn't work anymore. You know what I do with old stuff that doesn't work? I get rid of it and get new stuff. So I think it's time to get new stuff and get new sewers. I know it's a long-range plan, it's down the road, but there are short-term remedies. And I have a few ideas. I'm not going to take up the time here, but I would like the opportunity to talk about some of these short-term solutions and work with the city and residents to not handcuff them, allow us to try to come up with short-term solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin. A couple things. If you can give me a copy of those things.
Sure.
And I want to make sure that Director Beno gets them so that he can match his records to yours. Anyone who's ever had water in their basement, which is a lot of us, has absolute empathy for you. It is long-term, and I'm sure the mayor wants to stick around and talk to you as well. I'm sorry, and thank you so very much for you and anyone else from Chase who came here to talk about it. That's what this is for, and it matters. And there is someone else from Chase.
Madam Chair?
Yes, there are a couple other people from Chase as well. Councilman Bullock?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just one, sorry. I'm following your advice a little too directly. While we're on Mr. Gagan's comments, first of all, I'll join the council president in expressing empathy. That's kind of my worst nightmare would be to have a flooded basement. So three additional things. Number one, request the administration, can we look into this if we haven't already to diagnose whether there's some immediate fix. There are times when there are problems that crop up recently that I know the Public Works Director in other neighborhoods has been spending time to resolve. I don't know if that applies at all to your neighborhood or not, but number one, could we do that? Number two, Mayor, it occurs to me, part of the charge of the water board that we are in the process of setting up could include, let's make sure to improve the wet spots that still hang around the city. It doesn't affect all neighborhoods uniformly. There's certain junctions within the sewer system, but if we're going to be engaging over the next 5, 10, 15 years in major overhauls in our sewer system, this would be a great time to include proper functioning for neighborhoods. The third thing is that it concerns me very greatly to hear that City Hall is rude to neighbors ever, but especially in a crisis. There are plenty of times when City Hall is courteous and provides appropriate customer service, but quite frankly, there are too many times when I'm catching anecdotal reports that we're not courteous. And that's the obligation of those of us who are in leadership to improve that. So directors, you have employment procedures. I know, Mayor, one of your hallmarks has been training in lean and efficiency and effectiveness in customer service. I know that's something that's a priority for you. We've got to keep improving that. If we're inconsistent in our customer service, that's not acceptable. So I can understand a taxpayer saying, I need a helpful response with solutions, not a rude brush off from the people who are working for the taxpayers. I know that's something you all care about, so I don't want to pile on, but I do hope that we improve that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman.
And I just wanted to thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to echo Councilman Bullock's comments. Thank you for coming out tonight, and for the rest of the folks regarding the sewer flooding issue. And I do look forward to working with the residents, my colleagues in the administration, to figure out how we can be proactive about this issue, on a going forward basis. So thank you.
So there are 3 other people who came to talk about flooding, and if, without objection from those who signed up, I would like to keep on this subject. Another person on Chase is Jason Kiss and Monica Yost-Kiss. Do you want to speak? If you want to speak, if you want to echo, repeat any other piece of it, please feel free. And then Mrs. Graham, and then there's someone on Lake Avenue as well. So those are the 4 people who came to speak about flooding. Just your name and address for the record.
Sure. Hi, Madam President and members of the board. My name is Monica Yoskis.
I'm Jason Kiss.
And we live at 1290 Chase Avenue. We came here to speak about the flooding issues and echo our neighbor Jim Gagan's concerns as well. On June 15th, which is our wedding anniversary, we came home from a weekend trip away, and I went down to the basement to do laundry, and our basement was filled with water. And it was the two open drains.
Yeah, so it's just bubbling up out of the open drains in the floor, the sewage drains. So I was
Yeah.
sitting over with the shop vac.
Just getting it everywhere. And we called numerous emergency plumbers in the area, and when I called them, they were all aware, oh, it's Lakewood. Yeah, it's Lakewood. They all knew as soon as I said it's Lakewood, and they said, yeah, we're getting a lot of calls in Lakewood, so we're gonna be backed up. Some people were like, oh, we can't be out there for 4 to 5 hours. So we did end up, we did have plumbers come out that night, and they told us that, you know, essentially the problems with the sewers was the city's issue. However, to remedy the problem within our house, our basement was already waterproofed. So just like the Gagans, it's already waterproofed. And they had to install,
A backflow valve essentially to stop the flow from coming into the house.
yeah,
And it was about $4,500 of work digging up our floors and everything else.
yeah,
So
and several days we had to take off of work. So it was just extremely problematic, and the plumbers that were there said it was, when they dug up the ground, you were there when they were
yeah,
saying with the,
it was just coming, basically the water was coming in from the street into our thing. They snaked it all out and discovered there's no backups under our pipes. It must have been coming from the street. So.
so that was just wanted to share our story of what happened. So obviously it's known among the plumbing community that this is a problem. They've made a lot of money on emergency calls to Lakewood and probably just on Chase Avenue alone. So that's why we wanted to come and support our neighbors, because that was our anniversary gift this year.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and please, if you can, wait with the Gagans, and
Yep,
we want to get that paper no matter what. Yes, Councilman Jersey.
Make sure the microphone's on this time. And again, I certainly, you know, the water backup situation and this discussion, I think, is certainly important. Obviously, with the work that's being done on the storm sewer overflow, the pilot project we talked about earlier in the evening, you know, the other programs that we have that we're trying to identify ways to better connect or correct connections that we have on laterals and things like this, you know, it may be helpful, and again, if this is something that we want to put back into public works here, and not that it's a new issue, this is something that has always been an issue. You know, these lines have been around for far too long. They've been connected improperly in many cases. You know, I heard mentioned twice there of 2 other homes, and I think there's some need for understanding the plumbing and the way that water works in a basement. You know, waterproofing the basement, I mean, unless the sump pump is really able to push out the water table that's coming in, you know, again, I don't do this by trade, but I sell insurance, and water backup is not something unique to Lakewood. That happens in new communities, old communities, new systems, old systems. You know, while plumbers may recognize the area because it's an area that's being inundated at that storm, you know, I would think, and I could, because I've handled claims for people in these cases, brand new communities that have been just built run into these water backup situations. It's probably one of the most common claims that we end up seeing. You know, it's more common than having your house burned down, or until a couple of years of these big storms and hail losses and things like that, it was the most likely thing to happen for property damage. You know, obviously the city's trying to do what we can here between meeting the EPA requirements on one side, yet that connects in some ways. The waterproofing, that's going to keep it out from coming in through your foundation. When it's bubbling in from the lines that should be carrying it away, you know, having spent the $10,000 in a previous home on waterproofing, it won't stop water from coming through a pipe through your utility drain, you know, by your slop sink. That's a solution for a separate problem. And again, having spent the money myself on a house in Cleveland Heights for waterproofing, it's expensive, and I can imagine just how frustrating it is to see it. It'll address some of it if there's seep holes and things like that along the corners of the basement. But if the water's flowing in and infiltrating your house through that drain, it's probably not going to be able to keep up. And the backflow valve, I think that's one item that, in talking with Director Benno, is a potential solution. Reconnecting the lateral lines and things like that is another possibility. And certainly if we need to kind of lay this out for, and this is one where I think that the city can really provide a lot of service. This pilot program that we're looking at, that we just passed earlier here for some of the design build, understanding the ways to tackle the issue, identify what the problem is, and come up with a solution is obviously very, very, very important to be able to have homeowners that can protect their properties. It is an issue, and we need to come up with some of those technical tips of your option A, your option B, your option C, this is what the fix should be, and like we did with the sidewalk program, here's the different ways that you can address the issue to overcome that obstacle and remedy that situation. But again, there's different fixes for different problems, and each one's going to be unique and take some analysis on it. But again, hopefully this pilot program that we're doing is going to be able to get a lot of 100 homes with a lot of other examples. And if we can have that discussion in Public Works to be able to kind of provide some of those how-tos and what-tos, I think that would be a valuable way for the City Council through our committees and the administration throughout their knowledge of the field that's far greater than mine to be able to give some technical advice on how to better protect your home from these situations. So I hope that's helpful. Again, there's different sources of the frustration on this. Obviously, we wish that all the water carried away easily and quickly. Each one's going to be a little bit different as far as what the problem is, though. So again, if I could be of service afterwards, if you want to talk to me, please do. Obviously, not just because it's Chase, but because I've got some background. I chair Public Works if we need to have a technical hearing on this to be able to air some of this out or coordinate with some of our other folks on how to get this communication out better. I'd be happy to help out in any way I can with it. So I hope that's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Juris. Mrs. Graham, I realize you aren't to speak about the flooding, so I'll get you later, but Ms. Van Molken. Thank you. Did I get it right?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. And
Van
so,
Molken, that's good.
just your name and address for the record. Thanks.
Ada Van Molken, 14721 Lake. Also flooding. Our whole entire block, right across from Lakewood Park, has flooded 3 times in the 19 days. I've lived in Lakewood over 33 years, just purchased this house in November. New carpeting, it's a duplex that my husband and I live on one side, my daughter and her family live on the other. And we just had new carpeting installed in the finished basement. We had to pull the carpeting, get rid of furniture, but a big concern also is mold. We have a 1-year-old and a 2.5-year-old living there, my granddaughters. And we've also had the plumber out. We had the city out, they snaked and saw no trouble in our yard or anything. I also called the city and spoke with Brian, who promised last Tuesday they were going to have someone out because the sewer is obviously inadequate. Someone said it was a 12-inch pipe. The neighbors, because I'm new to Lake, I lived not far away before, but never ever flooded anywhere. But they said that ever since the old stone house was moved, which is right across the street from us, that they've had flooding over the years, but nothing to this degree. So my concern is also, we can't keep doing this. It's old, 3 times in 19 days is old. So we're constantly bleaching, we're, cleaning floors, and we now have our appliances up on cedar blocks. Maybe we should do that with our cars in the yard to match or something, I don't know. But, so that's our concern too, is, it's something is not right with the sewers there. I have friends across the street, Abbyshire, and to the west, the other side of the street has no issues. The park's across from us, but the houses that start after Lakewood Catholic Academy, no one has any issues there. So it's our block. I know of 7 people And when I called the city, they asked me if I was somewhere near 139 something, which they had a report on, so that's, 10 blocks east, so obviously it goes farther than my little block of the 7 people that I know of. So, same issue, flooding, getting old. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please stay, so you can hear the discussion afterwards. There's Keith Kelly as well. Keith Kelly about the sewers.
Keith Kelly, 1214 Chase Avenue, 2 doors down from the Gagans. I'm on the north end of Chase, and basically Mary and Jim interviewed a lot of people on the street. I'm on the bottom, water rolls downhill. I'm the first guy that gets it. It goes all the way up to Merle. We can pinpoint all the houses that got it. I think what Mayor Summers said about this sewer board, it would be great to do a study on our street because we can tell you all the houses that get hit, when they get hit. I do a lot of traveling with my job, so when it happens, of course, last 2 weeks, I've been out of town. So the first time it happened, I got home that day. Second time I was out of town, the night that it happened, I flew in that morning, cleaned up the basement, left on business 5 hours later, and then 3 days later, basement flooded the 3rd time. So it is a bit frustrating. I do appreciate the comments about, having the sewer board. It is frustrating though that, we have a lot of residents on the street that have spent a lot of money on the waterproofing. Obviously, it's the sewer that's backing up into the house. Backflow preventers are needed. We would like the city to at least work with the street to give us the best suggestion. Obviously, what Councilman Juris mentioned about, if you're gonna waterproof your basement and put a sump pump in, how are you gonna pump the water out when it's trying to get into your house? So that's a huge issue. You've got all this water trying to come in, and you're trying to pump the water out. Well, so right now it's a vicious circle. You're kind of self-inflicting with a sump pump because you can't get the water out because it wants to come in. So we really need to work with the city. Thank you.
Thank you. You also signed up for another.
Oh, okay. So the hospital. I am one of the residents of the city that is looking at the future of Lakewood. I understand all the facts. I understand both sides of the situation. I've lived in the city for probably 25 years. My grandparents grew up in the city. My father graduated from Lakewood High School. I've been a long time Lakewood advocate. I see the hospital as, an important part of the city, but I also see that healthcare is changing. And I think it's important that council look at the offer that we have on the table, that it's a good offer. I think as far as the money that the Hospital Association is spending, at some point that money's gonna run out. Who's gonna continue to pay for the hospital? It's gonna be the taxpayers. So I really think that we should take a good look at this offer. In 10 or 11 years, when the agreement's over, we're gonna end up with an antiquated building it's empty, and the city's gonna have to pay for that. I think we should look at redevelopment, a new emergency room, family health center, and move forward to the future of Lakewood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking up. I think that is the sewer and the flooding.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilman
I
Anderson?
just want to add my own couple of thoughts regarding some of the recent storms that we had. There seems to be a number of hot spots in Lakewood where whenever one of these severe storms comes, there's habitual phone calls to either council members and or to City Hall. And I think there's knowledge of these hot spots. I don't know where they all are. I understand there's one on Chase. The one I've been dealing with for 5 years or so has been on Bonneview, just north of the railroad tracks. So we had a pretty vicious storm a couple of Mondays ago. And instead of returning all the phone calls, I just went to Bonneview like 9 o'clock the next morning. And people were still tailing out their basements. There was about 15 homes that got flooded. And I spoke with a number of residents for about an hour. I called the mayor and just curious if he had time to come out and talk to these residents. He came out, spent about an hour and a half with the residents, looking at the area, getting all the stories, and understanding that this has been sort of a habitual problem for this end of Bonneville. And going back a few years, Director Benno's team was pretty proactive in sort of cameraing the entire street. And I know there's a maintenance system to make sure all the lines in Lakewood get somehow looked at on a regular routine basis. And Director Benno's team found about 6 or 7 minor issues on Bonneville, and they corrected them all. And the problem went away for a couple of years. And now it seems to have come back. We don't know if that's something to do with Oak Tree Manor, some of the adjustments they made to their parking lot, or some other things. But I guess from my perspective, it would be great to know if there are hot spots that are regular sort of performers, bad performance of rain, runoff, drainage. They're sort of habitual every time we get one of these storms. And I just want to appreciate here in public the mayor for taking time out of his morning to come out and talk to those residents. I know there's a plan to re-communicate with those residents on Bonneville, and look forward to supporting the administration. But you know, we do have a few hot spots. What can be done? Because I don't think it's an issue of, okay, we got flooded once. It's if we have hot spots and there's habitual issues stemming a number of years, well, that seems to be something we need to take care of, at least figure out a way to take care of them. So those are my thoughts. But again, I just want to appreciate the mayor and his team taking on the issues on Bonneville. Look forward to communicating with those residents. Maybe we can figure out a way to communicate to the residents of some of the other hot spots as well. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll pick back up. Charlotte Renko. Thank you. I got your name wrong. Sorry, Charlotte.
Not a problem at all. Thank you for having me tonight, and my name is Charlotte Werkel. I live on 1275 Manor Park in Lakewood, and I've been a resident of Lakewood for 58 years, and some days. So it's been a while. I wanted to talk a little bit about the hospital from a professional and a personal standpoint. First of all, I'm a registered nurse, and I worked at Lakewood Hospital in the 80s before it was part of Cleveland Clinic, and had a wonderful experience. I was born in Lakewood Hospital and oversaw the Detroit Avenue and nursery there. And then I had my last son, 5 children, in Lakewood Hospital, and that was the birthing suite I was in. So Lakewood Hospital is very dear to my heart, and medicine is dear to my heart as well. My family also is been in the city in a small business that has seen its ups and downs and survived the times. But I wanted to also say I've been a Fairview Hospital nurse as well, and worked in quality, overseeing quality for Fairview Hospital, and worked with all the community hospitals of the clinic. And I have to tell you, the care that has been given at Lakewood Hospital has been phenomenal. And as I said, I've used their emergency room, I've used their OB, their surgery, et cetera, et cetera. However, I've also worked in a nonprofit called Recovery Resources. I had the experience of transferring inpatient folks in the inpatient programs from Lakewood Hospital to Recovery Resources in Lakewood on Detroit. It was a phenomenal experience. Those folks didn't miss a beat in care because of the transition plan that we had in place. So that went by the wayside. I then had another experience under my purview of being at Recovery Resources, and that was Huron Hospital closing. And that was a very sad day. And what I can say is through that process and through that community going through the pain of that, a beautiful facility was built, the Stephanie Tubbs Health Center. I had the opportunity to bring behavioral health to that health center and serve that community better than it's ever been served. The one piece that we missed in Huron was there was no emergency room. My brother happens to be a firefighter and a paramedic for Cleveland Heights. He got calls on people's cell phone at the front door of the emergency room because people didn't know where to go. If we take this plan, we will still have an emergency room. That is huge. And so part of what I really want to say is healthcare has changed. We've changed. We're not a sick care society anymore. We're a healthcare society. We're into preventative medicine. And it's going to continue to change. And the only thing we can count on, if it's healthcare, if it's education, if it's businesses, is change. And I think it's time for us as residents, as council, as our mayor, to come together and to sit down with this body of experts in the knowledge of healthcare and to come up with the best plan to serve this wonderful community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking up. We appreciate it. David Stein? Thanks, Charlotte.
David Stein, 1495 Clifton Place. Councilman Anderson, I've got a hot spot too. 3 times 8 to 10 inches in the basement, all 3 times. So, but that's not why I'm here. I just want to address council to make everyone aware that we have a huge graffiti issue that began July 3rd. The side of Rosie's upper portion of their wall was hit. The side of Namaste upper portion of their wall was hit. Tonight, at 7 o'clock, coming over to this meeting, I counted 11 tags. They were all the same tag. And 3 of the tags look like they occurred today. My fellow merchants know me as kind of the eyes of Detroit. They all wonder how I can see so much and drive, and anybody that's been behind me knows I'm not that great of a driver. But I do see things. I am aware of what's going on, and there are some tags out there, and I just want to let every member of council know we need to be very alert to these things. All the people in the audience need to be alert to these things. There is somebody out there that is doing it. It is the same tag. It reads Geek, G-E-E-K. My one store was hit 3 weeks ago along with the Westerlies. Both of our monument signs were hit. I know with graffiti you've got to get it off immediately. The quicker it gets off, the less likely you are to get hit again. So I just want to make everybody aware of that. It's, like I said, it started July 3rd. I noticed July 4th, it's all been reported. I've talked with a variety of people from City Hall, and I know a couple of friends of mine have also talked to people, but just so we're all aware. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing this forward. We do need to stay vigilant, and people need to know that they have to call the police, the non-emergency number, if they see any of that. And I know that Public Works keeps that liquid, that product that can take it off, and that is something that we can send people out. Correct, Joe? I know Kevin Kelly or someone in Building and Housing actually drew. I take that back. And further, Kevin Kelly in Building and Housing, or maybe you can correct me, but there's also, people are tracking it so that we have a sense of it so that it can be part of, I hope, the process.
Madam President, the Lakewood app
Yes.
is great. I've used that. In fact, he was a little annoyed with me because we stopped on the way over here tonight, and I reported 2 additionals tonight. Also, the graffiti removal you can buy at Lakewood Hardware. And ironically, the company that makes the graffiti paint also makes the graffiti removal.
Yes.
So, nice business.
That's less than ironic, that's very intentional. Director Sally, did you want to, thank you, Mr. Stein, thank you very much.
Mr. Stein about covered it, but the app is helpful. A photograph helps us catalog. Our property maintenance inspector also work with the police department on this. We don't keep the remover on hand, but we certainly have recommendations we can make based on the surface where the graffiti's happened to help business owners or property owners advise them as to what's the best approach to removing graffiti, so they can call Building and Housing for assistance.
Thank you. And for those of you who do not have the non-emergency number, see me afterwards, or I'll read it to you at some point, but I keep it on my phone as well. Councilman Juris?
And again, thank you for bringing it forward, Mr. Stein. After being distracted by seeing you landscaping in front of Cotton this afternoon, my eyes were drawn to the unavoidable sight of that item over by Namaste, and that was reported as well by me. You know, again, it's good to hear that others are using that app and documenting that for the ones that fall beneath the cracks of the street that I don't happen to drive down that day. Obviously, the faster you get it down, the better. You know, I know that Officer Wintrick was unavailable as I tried to kind of reach out directly to him. You know, maybe we can work with the police department on one of those. We had a large graffiti item that was rather offensive last winter, of just trying to figure out a way to at least cover it, so at least the person that's tagging it isn't getting the notoriety in the meantime while we try to figure out how to get on the roof of an adjacent building and paint over it or whatever it may be. So again, certainly with a very large item like that one, if we can at least drape it in the meantime and take away the notoriety, I think that would be, at least take away the motivation for why they're doing it in the first place. But again, thanks for bringing those forward. You know, again, if others see it out there, please report it on the app, you know, and get that over there so that we can get on it right away. The property owners tend to be pretty responsive in my experience of wanting to get it taken care of. So sometimes they may not see it immediately, so again, alerting them is helpful as well as, I know we've talked about some other meetings and things like that in the past. So again, thanks for bringing it in here.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Councilman Anderson?
Yeah, just real quick, sometimes this graffiti shows up on public property. I was walking my sons back from Horace Mann the last week of school, and right at the crosswalk there of Clifton, West Clifton and Cannon, you have the little sign where you're supposed to hit the button to activate the crosswalk. There's a little sign there, it's about 1 foot by 8 inches, and there was a tag on that. So, okay, here we go. So I call Officer Morley at the non-emergency number, which is 521-6773. And he went out there and he categorized and took a picture of it, and I believe the sign's been cleaned up. But there is a tracking, and I know the police department takes these matters really seriously. So little sign at a crosswalk is just as bad as a big sign monument getting tagged. No tag's too small, and all tags are too big, as far as I'm concerned. So appreciate that.
Thank you. Pam Smith?
Good evening. I'm Pam Smith. I live at 1528 Elmwood Avenue, and I was a member of City Council from 1990 to 2001, and I was one of 2 council representatives on the Board of Trustees at Lakewood Hospital the entire time. When I first joined Lakewood Hospital's board, the hospital was partnered with UH, who split with us after building St. John out in Westlake. So in 1969, the hospital entered into a lease with the Cleveland Clinic. The hospital was making money month by month, and all was well. And how did we know? We counted the number of occupied beds, and money followed the beds. But behind the scenes, the rising cost of healthcare, changes in the medical care delivery system, and the multiple rules of insurance companies were all having an impact on hospital income, and not just here, but all over the country. For example, in 1996, a patient went into the hospital a day or 2 ahead of their operation for testing. In 2015, you take yourself to the lab for testing. In 1996, a new mother and a baby might stay 2 days in the hospital. In 2012, my friend's grandchild was born in Lakewood Hospital during Hurricane Sandy. The electricity was out everywhere, including the new parent's home. The mother and baby were still told they were discharged to find a friend where they could stay. Such are the rules we live with. In 1996, if you had a heart attack, you might have an open heart operation, involving bypassing your clogged arteries. In 2005, you're likely to be treated with the implant of a stent threaded through a vein to the clogged area. It's effective, it's fast, it's safe, and it's certainly less expensive. Hospitals simply don't need the beds they once had. The cost of maintaining and staffing those beds has become a liability, and Lakewood Hospital is no exception. The monthly figures at Lakewood Hospital were soon in the red. If the income for the month cannot pay the expenses, the cash reserve, saved from the good old days, has to pay the expenses. Realizing there was no turnaround in sight, the Board of Trustees of the hospital acted proactively, hiring a consultant to understand the issues and possible alternative actions. Was there a different partner to turn to? No. Was the experience in other cities with similar situations? What happened there? In a word, it was scary. Hospitals went out of business, leaving employees in the lurch and leaving empty buildings that could not be easily repurposed. Far from blaming the Board of Trustees and the public officials who serve on that board by the terms of the lease, I think we should thank them. They could have sat on their hands and waited and hoped for a turnaround that was never going to come. Instead, they negotiated the basics of a creative plan that can benefit all of Lakewood. The Cleveland Clinic buys land in Lakewood and builds an up-to-date family medical health center on their dime and millions of dollars of it, as well as a 24/7 ER. The Cleveland Clinic buys a hospital garage, an aging white elephant, hideously expensive to maintain. The Cleveland Clinic demolishes the Lakewood Hospital building, leaving 5.75 acres for tax-paying redevelopment by the land's owner, the city of Lakewood. And the hospital's cash reserves, plus the Lakewood Hospital Foundation's reserves, are combined into a Community Health and Wellness Foundation whose interest per year may total $1 million to be awarded annually to Lakewood community projects. City Council can act on this plan and produce a master agreement which will be the envy of every community in Ohio. But as each month passes, money that should be staying in Lakewood is disappearing to pay expenses at a hospital that simply can't sustain operations. Change is never easy. There will always be could-haves and should-haves and condemnations and finger-pointing, but none of that must distract you from the fact the hospital is not sustainable, and it's our money that's being used to prop it up. Your challenge, and believe me, having sat in your chair, I think it's an exciting one, is to be the change agent for Lakewood's future. It's not easy because there's always somebody, and lots, who don't like change, and sometimes I'm one of them. But isn't that the reason that you ran for council, to make a difference, to make Lakewood a great small city, to attract enthusiastic residents and businesses that work together for the benefit of all of us? I envy you. I wish you well, and I look forward to watching you work on the master agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Mary Osborne.
Good evening. My name is Mary Osborne, and I live at 1655 Elmwood Avenue. I worked for Lakewood Hospital for 27 and a half years before retiring in 2014. I began my career on June 2nd, 1986. At that time, the staff was under the opinion that the plan for Lakewood Hospital was to convert it into a nursing home. The notion that Lakewood Hospital was either going to close or be converted into a nursing home or for some other use was frequently discussed the entire time I worked there. City leaders were focused on keeping the hospital as an inpatient facility, and I'm actually surprised that they were successful at doing so for 30 years. That was made possible through the efforts of city and community leaders to convert the hospital from a municipally owned building to a private nonprofit institution in the mid-1980s. I understand that there are concerns that, quote unquote, something funny happened and the fall off in patients at Lakewood Hospital did not happen without some mistakes being made or bad decisions. But keep in mind that more than 10 years ago, between 1993 and 2003, 703 hospitals closed nationwide. Lakewood Hospital kept moving forward, but even 10 years ago, these hospital changes were happening. The Medicare people tell us that during the past 2 years, 27 hospitals have closed while 18 have opened. You can be certain not one of those 18 opened in a building like the present Lakewood Hospital. And while I am on the subject, the American Hospital Association tells us that inpatient surgeries fell almost 10% in the last 2 years and outpatient surgeries were up. During my employment at Lakewood Hospital, we were constantly being told that this trend was what we could expect. I spent almost 30 years wondering what would happen when the hospital closed, and what I see now is that we can benefit from a new, completely new emergency room and other services that only real change can happen if we need a bed. Which happens less and less. It is only 3.5 miles away. When you consider the millions of people who would be thrilled if their hospital was that short a distance away, I have to say I feel pretty good about what we have to look forward to. Basically, the clinic proposal provides the city with a new state-of-the-art building paid for by the clinic, providing services by clinic staff. In addition, land for future development will become available to the city. Moreover, depending on the speed in which City Council acts, monies from the Lakewood Hospital Foundation will be used to form a new citywide foundation. Most communities never find themselves with this kind of opportunity. Without this proposal, I do not see how we can end up with anything except an empty, very old building with nothing in it because no one wants it. Metro certainly has made it clear that they realize there is no further need for these inpatient beds. Even if there were an entity that would be willing to continue with inpatient beds, how would you staff it? Where would you find the doctors? More and more doctors have dropped their independent practices and joined hospital systems, especially as the clinic. Will they even be able to admit patients whatever this old building will become? Allowing the lease to run out will only result in dissolving monies that would be used to fund a new foundation and the demolition of an old building regardless. I urge City Council to act in the best interest of the city's citizens of Lakewood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne, thank you. Missy Toms?
Thank you. My name is Missy Toms, and I live at 1357 Lakeland Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of the new proposal for the Lakewood Hospital site. My 3 children and I have a genetic disorder that causes our blood to clot very easily. The major danger with blood clots is they can travel to the lungs and cause a fatal pulmonary embolism. I have been in the Lakewood ER a few times with blood clots in my legs and lungs. My family needs an ER that can provide my family with the emergency services we need. In most cases, blood clots do not require a hospital stay. We just need knowledgeable medical professionals who understand our disorder and treat it correctly. And they actually read our medical records. That's an issue that we have now, that they don't read our medical records, even though they're in the system. As a Lakewood resident and mom, I'm even more excited about the proposed Lakewood Community Wellness Foundation. I am Executive Director of the Lakewood Rangers Education Foundation, and I help the Lakewood schools find funding for projects that they need. I see real potential for a partnership between the 2 foundations to help Lakewood school students and families with programs that promote healthy living. I'm also involved with a new initiative called Lakewood Kids. It's a partnership with the City of Lakewood, the Lakewood City Schools, and Lakewood Child Care Center. Our mission is to make sure every child who enters kindergarten is ready to learn. Wellness is a major component of our initiative. We would like to reinstate the well mom and baby home visits that the city used to provide before funding was lost. This is a perfect example of a program the foundation could support. Right now, we have to look outside Lakewood to secure funding for the collaborative. We as a community should be able to provide these services for our families. And I do urge you, please, to push this proposal forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy. To everyone who spoke so far, would you either send us electronically your comments, Joel, on to Pam, to Mary, and anyone else? And if you have an extra copy, would you please give them to us? And thank you, Ms. Toms, for those suggestions. They'll be considered as we keep plugging away on this. Lori Allen.
Good evening. I'm Lori Allen, 1222 Ramona. I would like to bring to Council's attention tonight some of my concerns regarding alcohol establishments here in Lakewood. It has come to my attention that the Ohio Investigative Unit, also known as the OIU, has fairly recently cited several liquor establishments here in Lakewood for serving alcohol to underage persons. I will not name the names of the establishments. However, I feel there needs to be more oversight in regards to these establishments at the city's administrative level. It seems that almost every time I come to a council meeting, the council approves another liquor permit application. According to my findings from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, there are currently about 80 establishments that serve liquor here in Lakewood. In my opinion, there needs to be more oversight and stiffer penalties for establishments that serve alcohol to minors. As adults, we should know better that if we have too much to drink, that we should not get behind the wheel of a car. However, our youth's brains are not fully developed and may not understand the risks of operating a vehicle while impaired. I will add that I myself enjoy going out with friends occasionally to have a couple drinks. However, we are adults and always get a cab or a designated driver. According to the Center for Disease Control, an average of 30 people per day are killed in motor vehicle crashes that involve an alcohol-impaired driver. I have also noticed an increase in the amount of hit-skip motor vehicle accidents here in Lakewood involving cars that are parked on the side streets. I suspect that some of these accidents are caused by alcohol-impaired drivers. Our police do a very good job here. However, with the increase in crime combined with the increase in alcohol establishments, they cannot be everywhere at once. I believe that we need to hire more police officers if our economy is going to be dependent on alcohol establishments. I feel this would help keep our citizens and their property safer. I feel it would also be beneficial to have a couple of officers at night that are dedicated to impaired driver detection and apprehension. I assume that the police are taking orders from those in charge for this last point. However, there is an individual that currently owes the city of Lakewood $21,031.30 in fines dating back to 2007 for mostly alcohol-related citations. Recently, I've noticed that our police are giving this individual rides home when he is in trouble. I also believe that our police have been picking this individual up from the hospital to drive him home, as well as picking up his prescriptions from Walgreens. I would like to suggest to council that this individual be held accountable for his crimes. If he is not held accountable, I would feel that his problem is being aided and abetted instead of helped. Finally, it is my opinion, hearing all our citizens tonight that are worried about their basements, I know that you have talked about this fantastic $900,000 fiber optic phone system. In my book, that's $1 million. Why don't we put it into helping the citizens here? I think it's more important that they get that money for their sewers than you people have a phone system. I have a track phone that's 8 years old. It works for me. You don't need it. Your citizens do. So please think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Allen. Jeffrey Weber.
Jeff Weber, 1095 Homewood Drive. Since I believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words, I'm going to minimize my words and show a lot of pictures, so I've taken the liberty to put together a presentation that Karen is distributing right now. I'm not here to support either one of the groups, the Build Lakewood or the Save the Lakewood Hospital, but I am here to address the highest and best use of the land, because I think that while it might be a little premature right now, it is going to have impact in the discussions that this group and the administration will have over the coming months. So I'm going to put together a small presentation tonight where I'm going to ask you to imagine the possibilities of what that new health campus could look like. I believe it is consistent with the community vision that's already been written. There have been a lot of suggestions that have been made already. Director Siley has suggested moving the healthcare clinic to the lands west on the western property. Mayor Summers has suggested that healthcare and housing in the city of Lakewood needs to be formed for the next century. Councilman Bullock has suggested that a state-of-the-art iconic building with drawing power be built as part of the new campus. And Save Lakewood Hospital and Build Lakewood have each suggested their own alternative plans. I'm an ex-ad guy. I spent 35 years differentiating brands and finding out what was different and unique about each of those brands. I'm here to ask you to think about what is unique to Lakewood. What sets us apart from our Western competitive communities? And build upon those things which are unique to our community. Preserve and repurpose Lakewood's older buildings. We have buildings that other communities don't have. And once we tear them down, they are gone forever. maintain the walkability of the downtown district and promote increased foot traffic in all of downtown's retail establishment. Now, there are two large areas that we've looked at. One is the 5.7 acres on what I'll call the eastern property. The other is an almost equal amount of acreage on the western property. That does include some residences. Those may or may not be utilized under that. But on page 6, if you will, I talk about the possibilities of the western property. This would be the one that I believe in Director Siley's last presentation included some of the new healthcare facilities. Keeping with that, could there be a state-of-the-art emergency room on St. Charles? And could it be what Councilman Bullock has suggested? And I show you a picture of what one might look like. The Community Wellness Center could also be housed on that block. But what I'd really like to do is put a whole lot of attention on the eastern property. I'm going to recommend that you at least consider maintaining the Curtis Block building, that you actually imagine what the possibilities might be if you were to maintain a portion of the existing hospital building. And I've got two options to consider there, plus provide some new alternative housing to meet with the mayor's master plan. So what would a new hospital campus or healthcare campus look like on that eastern property? I'm suggesting it might include a boutique hotel, some new retail, restored apartments, and some new alternative housing. In January of 2003, this city commissioned and received a report on a hotel study for Lakewood. And what it concluded was that downtown Lakewood could support a modestly sized hotel. Currently, there are very few alternatives in the city, and the closest to downtown, the airport, and surrounding corporations are all very appealing. On page 12, I show you the current project going on in downtown Cleveland. It's the historic Schofield building on East 9th. It's currently undergoing an adaptive reuse of luxury hotel as well as apartments. I put a picture right next to it of the old original building of the hospital. I am struck by the similarities. Both are long, narrow buildings. Both have windows that are paired in pairs. Both have horizontal breaks on the facade. And both could include a luxury hotel and or apartments. So, option one is to convert the oldest part of the hotel to a boutique hotel. After all, hospitals have rooms and toilets, and hotels have rooms and toilets. So it seems only natural. On the next page, I show you what the exterior might look like. It's pretty similar to the exterior that's already there. And the interior would all be rehabbed with nice new modern high-end rooms. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the financial thing because, as I said, I'm an ant guy and I don't understand all this, but it seems to me that there's a whole lot of additional revenue that might be garnered as a result of the hotel there. If a developer says, gee, that project's just too small to take 60 rooms and try to make it into a boutique hotel, am I out of time?
You are.
Thank you very much.
This is tremendous. And thank you very much. And we are having a series of meetings coming up, and another one of them will be for development, but in the meantime,
I would just like to do
thank you.
one thing. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Mr. Weber.
One thing, I'd like to have you take very close attention to the bungalow village that's recommended. And the last picture on the slide in the entire presentation is a repurposed building. Mr. Stein recognizes it well. It's seen a lot of transformation through the years. And what I'm suggesting is buildings can be repurposed and they can be used over and over and over
Yes.
again.
Thank you, and it's a matter of finding the right investor with the right building, and that is part of what I think we're all geared to look for. Any of these possibilities are out there, that are out there.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilman Bullock?
Thank you. First of all, Mr. Weber, thank you for a great presentation and going to the expense of producing these print copies for us. I would support, in keeping with the rules that you began public comment with today, providing a few additional minutes so Mr. Weber could complete his presentation, which was, I think, going quickly and at a nice clip. I won't make a motion, but I would communicate to the chair that I think that would be helpful.
Terrific, thank you.
Could we do so?
Mr. Bullock, we went through the rules in the beginning of the meeting, and I think, Mr. Weber, I can't thank you enough for doing this, and I appreciate that you appreciate the rules, and thank you very much. And we would like you to come back at a committee meeting or any time, and please come back, but this is not going to waste. And there are other people here who might want a copy, because there are some very involved people. Thank you. And thank you, Councilman Bullock. Brian S. Brian S.E., I think it must be, but it says Brian S.
Thank you. I live at 15306 Edgewater Drive. I've been a Lakewood resident nearly my whole life, 56 years, probably 6 years I haven't been. I'll try to be brief. My mother's here tonight. She lives at 15400 Edgewater, and she has a flooding problem too. I have spent, in the last 100 days, approximately, my wife laughed, she would laugh, 1,000 hours. And I think that I probably spent a lot more than that. She would probably say 1,500 hours on this project, the hospital. There's a lot of misinformation, and I think we're way ahead of ourselves. The hospital does not need to close. It never lost money in any significant or threatening manner until the announced closing, and the announced closing is causing a lot of trouble. In the slides, the over 400 slides that have been made public, it's very clear that in October of 2013, exactly what is happening now has occurred. It was predicted in the analysis. And those three things that that were predicted was the risk that the current staff will get nervous about the possibility of job losses and leave before we are ready to change the scope of the facility. They also said there was a risk that the community begins to understand the changes of the scope of the services, and they will stop coming to Lakewood Hospital, and operating losses will escalate significantly. They also said that there is a risk of a public dialogue about the decision is prolonged, and it increases the likelihood of other execution risks occurring. That's all occurring now. We need to stop this as soon as possible. We need good leadership. Good leadership is about accountability. We cannot have change without accountability. I think we need to change our picks on council for the LHA board. We need to change the LHA board. We need to start solving this problem, and it's not about how land use that's been discussed in the minutes, and maybe not the minutes, in the slides since August and October of 2013. They talked about the potential development of health and wellness facilities or other attractive economic development elements. This has gone on long enough. And the public discussion of what we're going to do with this land has barely begun. And our hospital is burning. We need to stop it. The number one thing in a hospital turnaround is to change leadership. Everyone talks about how much money we're losing. No one's talking about why. And it's not about the environment. Lutheran's doing fine. Fairview's doing fine. In these documents that are on onelakewood.com and others that I have obtained, they talk about a $75 million investment needed for a Fairview hospital in order to take care of us in Lakewood as a consequence of closing Lakewood Hospital. By the Cleveland Clinic's own numbers, they only needed $90 million to make our hospital sustainable for the next 20 years. I'm told that number is high. The Cleveland Clinic plans to put $34 million into a new facility. They are going to invest more money than it would take to make Lakewood Hospital viable. And if we talk just simply about what Subsidian came up with and the $50 million long-term investment pool, we put the $30 million or so of LHF on the side. We have, and the $70 million of assets that we have, that are hard assets, including the $50 million. If we're going to sell our hospital, we better get $120 million, not a $32 million trust fund. We need $120 million. If the council's going to decide to abandon health care for our underserved, then we better get $120 million. And what's on Lakewood1.com, we all know is false. This is not $120 million unless council or some developer or Mr. Siley and the mayor come up with somebody that's got about $70 or $80 million more to put in our community and give to our community. not to build something that they keep. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for all the time you're spending here and online.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bullock?
Yeah, Mr. Essie, I did want to respond to catch-22 in the logic that you just described. You want to have public discussion, and yet you don't want to have public discussion. You cite documents that were not released because they were private documents from LHA caucus deliberations dating back 18 to 24 months. And now that there's a release, you're frustrated, along with the rest of us, that there's employee concerns, and it's one of, but not to my understanding, the majority driver of financial losses this year, this fiscal year at Lakewood Hospital. So, and you correctly say that we need accountability. So the question seems to be confused, because the criticism of the trustees and the elected officials is that we weren't public enough. But the criticism is also, now that there's a public discussion, it's creating a problem. Not sure how it can be had both ways. I can share, as one of the trustees serving for approximately 2 years, the discussions that I was a part of were appropriately and legally confidential for a time, as a first research, second discernment step, and third a planning process to see if there was a plan to consider or not prior to making a public announcement. Upon a public announcement, which, to be honest, I wish we handled differently. I think we created a extra confusing situation. But upon a public announcement, that was the beginning of a public discussion at which all of us, and this is the glory of Lakewood, by the way, the council president led us through one of the most concise meetings in terms of minutes of our official business that we ended prior to 8 o'clock, I think, and here we are sometime later. So all of us in Lakewood care so much that we show up and speak on all sides of all questions. And that's great. And I think the trustees and the elected officials among us who serve and always remembered our public duties as trustees knew and were loyal to the notion that we would have a community discussion. So we're having that this year. So Lakewood, I think, to the advantage of one of the other speakers, has a public component that some privately owned hospitals over the last 30 years haven't had. And that public component is that I think had some oversight. We don't have total control over the healthcare marketplace. But that oversight gives us this moment of our public discussion, and it also gives us some ability to influence the government's decisions. And probably it's for that reason alone that Lakewood Hospital survived and weathered some of the market shocks that have caused other community hospitals across the nation to close. So that's a success story, even if it's not unequivocal success story. But now here we are, you know, so because we're in a halfway situation, we have a private discussion by our private LHA board and a public discussion because we have a public component. We have a foot in each world. So I don't know how there is a way we could avoid that contradiction or that definition, but what I heard you do, Mr. Essie, was criticize both sides of that. In 2013, you wanted us to be public. In 2015, you didn't want us to be public. Which is it? So I think that the trustees were making their prudent best attempt from their seat to say what is financially responsible for the hospital and the community good. And we're now taking part 2 of that, which is all of us as community members and elected officials to say, do we agree whether that's public good? And I'll repeat where I am on the issue. I'm happy, as one council member, I'm only one of 7, to vote, to consider, prior to voting, any feasible alternative. We've been working hard to find other alternatives. A number of us have spent a lot of time pursuing Metro Hospital to say, Metro Hospital, do you have a proposal for us to consider? got clarity on that. I was disappointed that the clarity was they do not foresee a future in Lakewood Hospital or an inpatient facility in the Metro Health system. Don't know that we would have voted for that, or that I would. It would have depended on the specifics, but we didn't have that now come to us as an alternative to consider to the plan. So I think we're doing our best. And I'll say one final thing. I do want to request that the public, when you have a legitimate interest to speak passionately about Lakewood Hospital and any issue in Lakewood, that we keep the personal attacks to minimum. I do not always read all blogs, but some of the rhetoric is getting personal, nasty, counterproductive, gossipy, snarky, and I do not think that lifts Lakewood up or creates any solutions or problems. It's people's right, but taking my hat off as an elected official and talking to you as a neighbor, I do not think it serves Lakewood well. Nor does it persuade your neighbors if we are attacking in a personal way anybody, elected or unelected. So I would request that we all start afresh. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bullock, and thank you, Mr. Essie, for your earlier conversation.
I appreciate your acknowledgement.
If you'd like to address the chair again, Mr. Essie, you can go back up to the, I want you to feel free to go back up because Mr. Bullock brought something up. And I want to support him 110% on that if we could all refrain from the nastiness, that would go a long way. And particularly online. I know. You may feel free to address what Mr. Bullock said, and that although we refrain from this went into a question, and I'm giving you a moment to address Mr. Bullock.
Well, I think it's commendable that Councilman Bullock has taken the opportunity to say that there has been a mishandling in how the thing was announced, because I have made that point before. It'd be nice if others did too. And if anybody wants to take what I'm saying personally, no. This is a very serious thing. I think we need to change leadership on LHA. It's not a personal thing. We need a change. We need fresh thinking. We need other points of view. And I'm not saying in 2015 it should not be public. I think it should be open. So I think the Metro thing it's just not accurate to say they went away like the mayor has claimed. They were not considered. The negotiations began in June with the Cleveland Clinic, and they never responded after the September 14th proposal. This was a done deal at that point with the clinic. I've read the documents. It's loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Clearly, it's not a done deal. We haven't even gotten to a master agreement yet. We are continuing to work forward. By the way, I found these glasses here in case there's somebody's from a previous meeting, and having been called dishonest, I want to publicly say, if somebody lost these, I'm just borrowing them from the night, and I'll put them right back where I found them. Mr. Essie, perhaps they're yours. Next is Coletta Graham. Mrs. Graham.
Coletta Graham, 1286 Chase Avenue. I'll talk briefly about the disaster on my street. I am the second longest person living on Chase Avenue. In fact, my neighbor here is the longest. And we've been through a lot on Chase Avenue. And talk is cheap. And I don't want to hear about a committee for a year studying the water disaster, especially on our street. We need something done now. I mean, it's ridiculous. Let's go to just the street itself, a disaster recovering on the street. As well, you know, I've come to council about when are you going to patch it, 3 different times. Finally, they did patch it. But of course, the inspector was at the other end of the street citing us for the sidewalks. But this is one of the problems with the sewer. You have chunks of gravel and grit all going into that sewer system, plugging it up. The street cleaner's machine broke down in front of my house because he couldn't pick anything up because there was so much loose debris on the street. But it goes on and on. You know, 10 years ago, I had a main water break, not on the tree line, but in the middle of my yard. And it was like a geyser shooting up into the thing. It was in the middle of winter. And at the time, they tried to patch it, but of course, it didn't work and they had to replace it. And I remember distinctly him saying, these pipes are over 100 years old. They're all ready to disintegrate. They're shot. They're completely shot. But that's here nor there about. I'm just hoping that something gets done, not talk on and on, like meetings with the hospital, go to this meeting, go to that meeting. And it just goes on and nothing really is getting done. I'm looking at our ex-neighbor up there. You're glad you moved off the street, aren't you? All right. I don't know, and it's probably been brought up already, but my daughter lives in Fairview, and in their community, they have bags of sand in front of each one of the drains on the streets. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It stops the flow of the water going into the sewer. It at least alleviates it some so it's not as bad. And all of Fairview is like that. I don't know if any of you are aware of that. I don't know if Mr. Bennett would like to look into that. But see, you know, you're talking about rainwater. It's not rainwater, it's sewer. It's black mud and muck. And it's erupting. I have a shower stall in the basement, up through the shower stall. Oh, don't even get me going on it because it's disgusting. And I thank my neighbors for coming. It's really good of you to come. Okay. Now, I want to talk about my water bill. I received my water bill, and inside was a letter from Mayor Summers in regards to the hospital. And I want to know, I just can't understand, why would you put that in the water bill?
You direct your comments to me, Mrs.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, thank you.
Well, and then you ask him. Why, Mayor? Why? Why? I just want to know why. Why? We're paying for the mailing, the postage, for the bill. I don't think it should be a freebie for advertisement in support of the hospital. Are you going to ask him that, or?
And this is not designed to be a Q&A, but please stick around later, and many of us will talk to you about it,
Okay.
including the mayor.
I don't know how much time I have.
I know you would. We'll let Mrs. Graham finish with her other questions.
I want to
Sign
talk
up for a
about the
couple other
Curtis.
things.
I want to talk
Yes.
about the Curtis building. I don't know if any of you are aware of it. It's the corner of Marlowe and Detroit that goes out. All right. I wonder if Pam remembers, Pam Smith, because I know she was on council, because I have been bringing up that facility, that building, year after year after year. Year after year after year, it's sat empty. And this was owned by the hospital. Money from the storefronts and the apartments above will be coming in to us, to the city. But we're talking at least 15 years. And I did fight, and finally, I got Nikki Antonio, God bless her, when she was still on council, because in the storefronts, they had bedpans, potty chairs, walkers, all thrown in the store windows. It was disgusting. Am I out of time already?
You are, but thank you. And also, I'd like you to stick around if you can and speak with Director Pay, because I think some of that was inaccurate about the finance for the Curtis. Is that about right?
One
So
quick sentence.
Not a Q&A, but do stick and hang and talk with us, Mrs. Graham.
The Historical Society wants to make the historical building. Why not make the hospital That's over 100 years old.
Thank you. Alex Delisle, did I get that right?
That's correct.
I did, didn't I? Thank you, and you're on Grace, thank you.
Yes, I am. My name is Alex Belisle. I'm on 1438 Grace. I recently moved here from New York City about 6 months ago. Good evening, distinguished council members and Mayor Summers and fellow Lakewood citizens. I'm also the creator of Faces of Lakewood on Facebook and Catching the Light in Lakewood. I really love this city. And I'm sort of concerned about a couple of things. For the last few years, I've been a photojournalist for some of the large New York City newspapers and had contacts with many politicians and people of money and people of influence. And I've been privy to all kinds of meetings at the large city level with real estate developers, talking about how much money that could be made by gentrifying poor neighborhoods. I've listened to politicians talking between themselves about how big money could be used to influence legislation, about how giving big business favorable tax breaks and favors could ensure their reelection. These were quite disturbing things, and they were common knowledge, but when you work for a newspaper, especially as a photojournalist, you realize how pervasive these things are. I would hate to see things like this happen here. My eyes were opened, and through the critical lens of my camera, I saw how the impoverished were constantly fighting a losing battle. As a native New Yorker, but now my home here is in Lakewood, I'm both cynical and curious. And I think my curiosity prevails over my cynicism. I've been walking the streets, I've been riding my bicycle through different neighborhoods, I've been doing photo shoots for the Lakewood Observer, and I've been doing a lot of photography for myself. I saw most of you at the 4th of July parade, and your pictures are probably on Facebook. And I've been seeing things for myself. Just sitting here tonight, I've heard all kinds of things, and it's quite interesting because you want to hear this for yourself. I've heard things first person, second person, third person. I've read all the local blogs that are out there, and I've even participated with those blogs. And so I just want to leave you with just one simple basic request. And that is, please don't let people and institutions of money and influence write the script for the future of Lakewood.
Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Terrence Kilroy.
Hi, I'm Dr. Terry Kilroy. I live at 15431 Edgewater Drive, and my office is at 14701 Detroit Avenue. Basically what I wanted to talk about was the committee of the whole meeting about 2 weeks ago, in which Mr. Gable and Haber presented to the committee of the whole. When I was standing in the meeting, it dawned on me that everybody in that room, I'm the only one who actually walks the wards every day and talks to the nurses on a regular basis, and have been doing that for about 30 years now. And so I basically developed a number of questions that I would have had for Mr. Haber and Mr. Gable if it had been an open forum, which the committee of the whole is not. So I'm kind of hoping that the questions that I raise right now, the city council members will bring to Mr. Haber and Mr. Gable to obtain some answers, okay? Their discussion began with Mr. Gable saying that the nursing morale is very low, and basically implied that nursing morale at Lakewood Hospital was low because the city council wasn't moving fast enough to adopt the LOI and basically kill the hospital. The nursing morale is low at Lakewood Hospital, but it's because most of those nurses have worked there 20 or 30 years, and they see their life's work coming to an end by circumstances that are essentially beyond their control. That's the reason that the morale is poor. They feel that right now, because of the diminution of services at Lakewood Hospital, they can no longer develop the kind of care that they've had their entire lives and that they felt very proud of. They also see no future legacy for 30 years of hard work with very difficult patients. Mr. Gable then went on to talk about that the senior nurses are leaving, okay? And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing because the senior nurses are leaving because, frankly, the Cleveland Clinic is poaching them. It was kind of an interesting thing for me as the former director of the ICU when they announced on January 14th that they were going to close the hospital, the LHA did. Mr. Shannon had a nice discussion with the rank and file nurses saying, you should stay as long as you can and support us. Interestingly enough, that week, main campus Cleveland Clinic hired away our head nurse from our ICU, CCU, and step-down unit to be the head nurse of their unit. Another interesting thing was about a month ago, Fairview Hospital's administration approached our head nurse of our telemetry unit and said, why don't you come and run our telemetry unit, and by the way, why don't you take some of our nurses? It's pretty hard on morale when the officers on the ship are all abandoned, are getting off the ship and into the lifeboats before it's officially declared that it's time to abandon ship. So my first question is did the board, through Mr. Gable, ask the Cleveland Clinic to stop poaching our nurses while we're trying to go through our deliberations? And so that's the first question I had. Mr. Haber then got up and gave an interesting presentation about the economics of Lakewood Hospital, which is, he says that essentially we made money in 2013, we lost $400,000 in operating expenses in 2014, but we made some money on our $50 million investment, meaning that 2014 was essentially a wash as far as the economics of the hospital, which raised the question of, if our economics were okay in 2013 and 2014, why are they pressuring the city council to truncate their deliberations when they tried to do basically their job? The other question came up was, if we're losing as much per month since the announcement in January, what's the cause of that? He said essentially we lost about $500,000 a month since they made the announcement and sent a letter to all the people who live in Lakewood, and then acted like this came out of the blue and was a complete surprise. The next question I had for Mr. Gable was, well, did you send a letter to the people of Lakewood telling them the hospital really is still open, and until the city council makes its deliberation, they should continue to come to the hospital and use its services? The mayor was able to send his opinion through my water bill. I don't understand why we couldn't have done something similar from the LHA, telling the citizens of Lakewood that Lakewood City Hospitals is still open and that they should continue to participate there. And so, you know, that was an interesting thing. The next thing is did they do anything as the LHA to try and avoid further loss of money? They have not explained why under their leadership, essentially we're losing money hand over fist since they made the announcement, and what was the actual cause of that. So essentially what I'm saying is that the city council needs to figure out what's been going on the last couple of months. Why has there been such a rapid collapse? And basically, that's the questions I would ask you to ask them.
Thank you. So we have it on tape. We will have, I can go by my count, 5 questions. I think Councilman O'Leary just copied them all down.
Yeah, I'll email you a copy.
Yeah, thank you. That's what we would appreciate. Thank you very much. Jason and Monica already. So Pam Watula. Pam.
Good evening. Pam Watula, 11813 Clifton Boulevard. Thank you for having me. Everybody, it's late, right? Much of what I wanted to say has already been said, so I'm going to try to be brief. I am very concerned with how things are being spinned. When we talk about a loss at Lakewood Hospital, we're talking about money, and I am clearly understanding that this has been planned obsolescence. I think we have evidence that strongly supports that. So when I hear of the leakage of how much money we're losing, I'm in concurrence with the couple of people that spoke before me, that there's a reason for that, and that not everybody in Lakewood is understanding that reason, and they are blaming the wrong source. I am concerned about the confusion over Metro and their plan to help us, and why I don't see evidence that we took them seriously last year. That is a question that I have. I've heard this thing about we've made mistakes, and I think you have made a few. The confusion over the obsolescence of an old building. We have a Lakewood Historical Society that preserves beautiful buildings. There's Boston Memorial. There are many, many hospitals in this country that have maintained the facade of the old structure and maintained state-of-the-art medical care. I'm concerned about, is this the Cleveland Clinic, Lakewood Cleveland Clinic Family Health Center, or is it Lakewood Hospital ER and Family Health Center? We have people spouting. Those are two distinctively different things. One says there is no Lakewood Hospital, and the other says there is. I'm concerned about the fact that why we are calling a health center that is basically a doctor's office, why we are calling that a wellness center and a health center. If you have been out to Stephanie Tubbs Jones out there, it is a beautiful facility. It is a doctor's office. Maybe a cut above a doctor's office, but it does not help those poor children in Lakewood who have to have food vouchers to eat in the cafeteria. It is not a free clinic. It will not benefit people who do not have health care or who do not have the money to pay the copay. The foundation that they say, $32 million Lakewood Wellness Foundation, that sounds pretty. We have no guarantee what that facility is going to contain. We have no guarantee that we have control over it. We already know that the Cleveland Clinic wants control over that, and they want to be on that board. And we are not taking into consideration those 1,000 jobs that we are losing. I am confused why we're not worried about the retail space that we are emptying out when we create this health center that is really a nice doctor's office. If we're talking about, in one hand, we're a diminishing city, we have less people. On the other hand, we're not worried about filling this retail space, which diminishes our finances even more. You know, East Cleveland lost Huron Hospital. They have a 50,000 square foot facility that is a doctor's office and no ER. We're going to have a little bit bigger, 62-1. But how can you call it a state-of-the-art ER room when it cannot deal effectively with heart attack, stroke, seizures? That is not a state-of-the-art ER system. That is an emergent care. Broken bone, put a Band-Aid on it. It's good for that, but that is not a state-of-the-art. That is not a wellness center. That does not serve on 55,000 people, 50-some thousand people in Lakewood. I'm wondering if we continue down this path, because East Cleveland has been suffering for years for a number of reasons, including politics. Are we going to change our name to West Cleveland as we lose our financial solvency? It's a real concern to me. I am concerned. I love Lakewood as much as you do. I'm the big 6-0. Same year as Mike. He was our president of our class at Lakewood High. 2/3 of my life I've lived here. I walk the streets. I love this place. We have an aging population. There is no reason to expect that we do not have the need for inpatient. I'm leaving, and with that I'm going to say, if Avon deserves a health center and a hospital, so do we.
Thank you, Ms. Rutula. That brings us to the conclusion of our public comments, unless there was something you'd over there.
Madam
Is there
Chair.
anything else over there, Mrs. Fox? No. Are there comments from council?
Madam Chair.
Yeah,
Just
Councilman
briefly,
Bullock.
in response to two of the questions raised by the last two speakers, first off, I want to say thank you for being here, and I share your concern and motivation to make Lakewood and Lakewood Hospital the best it can be. So I normally would do more listening than tonight, but there are two key points. One about financial losses by Lakewood Hospital Association this year, this fiscal year, 2015, and the second is about Metro Hospital and whether or not they have a proposal for us. And those are key facts that we don't have to remain confused about because council has been working hard for the last 6 weeks or more on those very questions. So briefly on this, number one, Dr. Kilroy, I've said this at least twice in council deliberations. I think you've been present for both, but just to clarify again, the trustees have been told that the losses, the additional accelerated losses in 2015 experienced right now by Lakewood Hospital are a blend of multiple sources, not one source. We can ask for, I think, a clear picture and a finer resolution. I will seek some of those about exactly what the proportion is. A small proportion is confusion over the announcement that's being aggressively addressed through education of EMS personnel. Bigger proportion is Lutheran Hospital's ER, which had been under renovation for several years, is now fixed, and their patient base is returning to Lutheran Hospital. And a third proportion is the loss of the ability to do catheterization in Lakewood Hospital, which happened in February of this year after an August 2014 inspector came, which has nothing to do with any of the deliberations or proposals we're talking about, although it is badly timed insult upon injury. There are multiple sources, so we have heard about that. I've spent time on the phone with Dr. Jones to say, what are you doing about this? I think the trustee leadership have too been applying additional advertising and communications efforts. Some of your points about letters to residents are good suggestions. Perhaps we can pursue those. Our work remains in front of us. And I recall hearing from Chairman Gable and Mr. Haber both that the goal isn't to do nothing for the rest of the year from an LHA trustee point of view, but to implement measures to stabilize those revenue losses. So we've known that for some time. We don't have to remain confused, and it would be inaccurate to give the public the impression that all of the financial troubles experienced by Lakewood Hospital in the near term are because of an announcement. Second point, on Metro Hospital, I do think we know the answer now, because at least 4 members of council, I don't know if there are more, have spent time personally in recent weeks trying to get Metro leadership to come before this body and talk to us. And talk to us, if they didn't want to talk about a hospital proposal, talk to us in general about healthcare, and the answer has come back no. Quite to my frustration, frankly. I think what we've learned is that Metro Hospital has experienced a change in circumstances since they initially filed a proposal. Number one is a change in the financial priorities of the county budget. At least there's a lack of clarity there. And number two, they're experiencing competition from university hospitals, which is opening a Trauma One medical center. So their focus is now at renovating their critical care center, which is an $80 million project, which is the first step of a 7 to 10 year campus renovation plan, which will cost $800 million. That's where their focus is. If the trustees had recommended the Metro plan as proposed, I'll speculate, and you're not supposed to speculate about hypotheticals. Two things might have happened. Number one, unless that plan was significantly improved, I don't know that I would have voted to hand over for $0 6 acres of city-owned land to the county. And there were a bunch of other undefined dimensions to that plan that may not have withstood scrutiny. Second is, I think we'd be in the same place we find ourselves today, which is that the community would shine the same high amount of scrutiny, spotlight of public scrutiny on any proposed change to our precious resource known as the Lakewood Hospital. And we would be 9 months in or so, 7 months in, feels like longer, to the same discussion. And I don't know that Metro Hospital, a proposal from them would have been easily agreed to in a quick and timely fashion. So if Metro Hospital has experienced that same double change in circumstance, it's not clear at all that they would have been able to maintain their initial proposal. Now, I'll acknowledge that's speculation on my part, but what council has been doing is bending over backwards to reach out to the Metro leadership. We did get a clear answer, and that clear answer, unfortunately, was no. So I don't think we have to look with regret at this point on Metro Hospital, unless they'd like to come to us next month and change their answer.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements from council?
Okay, I don't get to respond to that?
Dr. Kilroy, this isn't meant to be a Q&A,
Gotcha.
and Councilor Bullock felt compelled to talk, but we are having, one of our next meetings is going to be an open Q&A for Dr. Kilroy. One of our next meetings is going to be an open Q&A for anyone in the community who wants to directly ask questions of anyone on council or anyone in the administration. So it is tentatively scheduled for the 27th, and it may very well be right here. Okay? Thanks. Are there any other announcements from council? Are there any announcements from the administration? Mayor?
Madam Chair, I would like to give a special note of appreciation to the employees of Lakewood City who worked very hard over the 4th to protect us and provide a safe and clean environment in that park. And secondly, I want to remind folks of a Woodward community meeting, 7 p.m. Wednesday evening at Harding Cafeteria to discuss whether or not the traffic calming experience over the last year makes sense to continue.
Thank you. Any further announcements? I move to adjourn. Any discussion? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.